Welcome to Life Fit with DVD. I am back again with another video, and today I wanted to talk about something that's important because it's the headline news right now, or if you haven't seen it, it should be, and that is the banking situation in America right now. It is not looking very good with what is going on. And I wanted to take some time to talk about why this is important, and everybody needs to be listening if they're not listening to it already. If you have found your way here accidentally, thanks for coming. But what I wanted to talk about is what's going on, and that is recently there has been three or four major banks that have had a run on them. So that means there are regulators that are shutting down these banks, and people are not able to get their money out. And what is happening is that the banks do not have the customer deposits. So what is happening is that these banks are at a risk of going under, and all of the people that have money in these banks, whether it be personal or commercial or anything else, people, businesses are not able to pay their bills and get their money that is theirs because these banks don't have it. So these banks are Silvergate, First Republic Bank, and Silicon Valley Bank is the big one I think has been talked about. Also, Signature Bank, I think I had seen last night. But all of the banking sector right now has been going down significantly today. Now it has been bouncing a bit. However, let me just take a step back. The reason I'm talking about this is because this is my background. I studied economics and psychology. I have worked for banks in the past, and even though I don't go down this path very often anymore, and I'm not working in that sector, I wanted to get away from it for a variety of reasons. I still study it from afar, right? I still understand what's going on. I think it's critical to being life fit, as I always talk about here, to understand what is going on in all of these aspects of our lives. And the reason this is so important because this does affect us, right? If you can't get your money out of the bank, well, that's a big problem for being able to do anything in your life via transactions, via purchasing anything, paying your employees, or you know anything you want to do. It's a transactional thing, and if your resource is gone, all of a sudden that's been taken from you, and you can't access it when you want to access it. It's not yours, and that is a big deal because what I always try to preach here is that we need to become more self-sustainable. We need to be more self-reliant and take care of our health in every possible way, in every facet that we possibly can, because it's things like this, like today and what's happening, that we need to be sovereign for. We need to be self-reliant for. And if we can have the means and our resources to transact outside of a situation like this. So backing up or going back to what I was talking about is that the Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has said that they are going to backstop these banks, but it's going to use FDIC deposit insurance fund money. So they're saying that this isn't going to affect taxpayers and it's not a bailout, but that is not true. That is a lie, right? It is a bailout because even though it's coming from the FDIC only has about 1 billion in deposits, or sorry, it only has about 100 billion max, and what is held in the banks, especially on the derivative books, are trillions and trillions of dollars. So I had seen something that basically the FDIC only has enough money to cover about 1 to 3% of actual deposits in these banks. And imagine if they all actually go under. Um, Now they're talking about only $250,000 of FDIC of money, of your own money, is insured. So anything above that, right, is, the banks essentially. They get to keep it, and FDIC will not bail it out. But ultimately, that's not how these things typically work. Typically, the big players are the ones that are bailed out, but the little guy is not who is bailed out. So if this was a bank in the middle of North Dakota or something like that, that supports the local communities and farmers or whatever, they're not going to bail them out. They will not do it. And it highlights, this is just a random example, but it highlights the hypocrisy of the system, right? Of what is too big to fail. Because this is 2008 repeating itself again, where 2008 had the subprime mortgage crisis, where all of the lending agencies, the agencies that were rating all of these subprime mortgages that were bad mortgages lended out to people that couldn't pay them back. They were packaging them up within the banks, and they're saying, "Oh yeah, no, these are good." And basically, it was things that were never going to be paid back, and putting a positive spin on something that is a trash asset. And once again, this caused a major systemic meltdown within some of these companies. And some were bailed out, but others went under. And this is another situation where history appears to be repeating itself. Because ultimately, we cannot get out of this situation when the Federal Reserve is manipulating our interest rates. But I'm going all over the place. Let me continue this rundown. So, the FDIC, what happens after the FDIC burns through all of its cash? Well, the Federal Reserve is going to print more money to support these big banks. So, this encourages the banks to act, in an irresponsible manner. And traditionally, when you make a bad decision, you need to feel the consequences. You need to experience the fallout from that, and there are ramifications for that. That is something that isn't typically happening anymore with the accountability and the responsibility that people need to have, including businesses. And is it right for the government to be bailing them out? No, it's not. But they're saying, oh, it's too big to fail because, well, the financial hardship that would come from it will have a significant impact on a lot of people. But the alternative is that this creates more pain down the line when all of the currency that's being printed to bail out these banks ultimately affects the dollar in this country. It means that the dollars that are in the circulation, the money supply, are going up so much that the value of the dollar is going down. And what that means is higher prices. So even though the Federal Reserve is fighting inflation, it's going to make inflation worse. And this is really another big problem because even though they bail out the banks, and yes, they will potentially give you your money back, it means that it's at the cost of tomorrow and how much things are going to be. So let me take a breath here. So there are over $10 trillion in bank deposits across the U.S. And I don't know if you remember, but I had said that there's $1 billion in FDIC insured funds. So This again comes down to that they don't have enough money, and that doesn't include the 300 trillion that they have in all of these derivatives within the banks. So the FDIC has already burned through all of its cash just to bail out these three or four banks just today. So what's going to happen with this? Well, people are probably going to take their money out of the banks to reduce their exposure. And what happens when that happens is the banks don't have the money, they don't have the assets. So as a result, this will probably mean that the Fed will raise interest rates even higher, so that they can try to bring down the interest that these banks have to pay um, on their bonds, on the other treasury bills, but this will ultimately make more banks fail. So ultimately, this is a very dangerous and scary situation that we need to be paying attention to. And what I would recommend in this sort of situation is that because we're anticipating higher prices going into the future, we want to spend our money now because it will be worth less in the future. So if there are things that you need to get, things that are important to you, right? Especially if they've been going up in price a lot, get them now. It doesn't hurt to have a backup of, or some extra of stuff to stock up on things, if you have the means to do that. Um, you know, because ultimately this will become a credit situation as well. And I know not everybody has the credit to even, prepare for something like this. But if you do have assets in the bank, it's probably a good idea to keep what you need to pay in terms of expenses, but take out what you need in any sort of savings into some form of cash, because ultimately cash, you'll be able to transact with that still for now. But as I know, is all across the news, everything is becoming digital, and they're trying to implement a central backed digital currency. But this is another problem because it leads to more control of what you are doing with your own money. And if they don't like what you're doing, they can just shut that off. Just like if you have money in the bank and you're trying to get it out and you can't get it, you don't have any flexibility. So having cash is a good thing. Spending money on things now that are going to hold value, especially if there's some sort of capital or just things that are useful, right, for building or growing or a sustainable asset. Um, I had gotten a water distiller a few years ago, and it makes me realize, wow, this water distiller is a really good thing to have, because all I drink is distilled water, and it's worked out really well for me to clean up my body and my complexion, and to basically ingest the nutrients and the minerals that I want to ingest instead of drinking some sort of city water or purified water in plastic bottles, which you don't know how much is being leached off of that. So that's just one example. So other people suggest gold and silver. That's a possibility to preserve wealth that has preserved wealth historically. The banking sector has held down the prices of these assets as well. So if they are in trouble, it, in my opinion, is only a matter of time before these prices on these assets actually become highly valuable again, depending on what sort of currency we're transacting in. I know in other countries, some of these precious metals have made all-time highs over the past few years. So it really depends on where you are, and what you have access to, what you can afford. Um, I think that land and all sorts of things like that, land and housing will continue to go up, at least in the short term. Everybody has been anticipating some sort of collapse in the housing market, but if the Federal Reserve is going to print all of this money to backstop the banks, then that means that interest rates are going to come down. And that then means that the prices of housing and land will only continue to go up. So that is just another way in the short term to preserve what you already have, and ultimately having a house or land is a resource. Now, of course, I guess that could be technically taken from you at some point, but at least you have it in your possession for now, and it's another way to figure out what to do with your money in this crazy time that we are living in. Ultimately, I don't really know what's going to transpire with all of this, but from everything that I look at and I mean understand, over the past 2 decades of researching this stuff, yeah, like we need to try to become more prepared and sovereign in and of ourselves, and to be not just have a good fitness level, but to be prepared in our own fitness of our life. And I mean, it's just another way of me trying to say why I've made this channel. And ultimately, this channel is also about understanding ourselves and where we fit in all of this. And that's another reason to be life fit. But I just love the play on words with all of this. But ultimately, this is an important message that I wanted to get out and just kind of detail some of the things that are taking place right now and why you should be paying attention. I know these things can be, a little bit scary. I know they can make you feel unprepared, but only ignoring them can really put you in a bad spot. The time is now to become educated on this stuff and to be aware of what's going on so that you are in control of your life and that you're able to you're able to make your own decisions. Because ultimately, staying ignorant to it will only make it so that we are subservient to it. What we don't understand is what will destroy us, right? We can't be ignorant to things. We have to look at them for what they are. Try not to get too emotional about them. If you feel too emotional about them, well, then take a step back. But you can't ignore these things forever. And I'm just bringing these things up not to scare anybody, but to try to help people become more prepared and more life fit. So I hope this might help somebody. And if you could, like or subscribe, it would mean a lot to me. If you want to speak with me or chat with me about anything else, a message down in the comments would work. Otherwise, let me know if you want more of this sort of news events content. But I guess that is it for today. I just thought it'd be an important thing to share. And until next time, see you later.